Yes, guys, welcome back to the Natural Muscle Podcast. With your hosts, as always, Luke and Finn. So it's episode 11 now. As you can see already, we have a very special guest here, Tina Phenom, as I like to say. So after his first season was very successful first season. I'm sure many of you listening and watching to this will already know of Jacob's kind of backstory. Well, his success throughout this season, and we'll dive a little bit further into that and into his kind of like training background and so from there. So Jacob, like I say, pleasure having you on. It was a great first season and stuff. So if we take it kind of like back to like your early years of training, really, like what got you into training and what got you into like the bodybuilding realm, so to speak, mate?
So initially, I started training at like kind of at the latter end of being 13. So I was pretty much like at the end of middle school, and I wasn't really like typical sort of standard. Like I wasn't really too happy with my body. I
Yeah.
thought, oh yeah, I'll go to the gym with my mum. Started training at a very local gym to me. Just like stupid like bro split sort of stuff. Like 4 times 10. Not really knowing what I was doing, and then a few years, like a year or two after that, it kind of transitioned into getting into powerlifting, like seeing that all over Instagram, and I really enjoyed that for a little while. And I ran the first proper program I ever ran was Smovlov Junior. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but it's like a very high frequency, high volume. Probably not the best first program to go into, but it was, I think, in a way that kind of was what made me fall in love with training hard. Um, just because it was very, very demanding. I'd go in, I'd squat, then I'd do it on bench press too, and then I'd do like two accessories and just be like, yeah, I'm done, I'm finished. It was pretty brutal. Um, and then from there, I did end up competing once, just before COVID. That went really well. I was the only person in my class, so I won anyway. Uh, and then
What
throughout COVID,
was that, Jacob?
it was the ABPU. So I actually didn't know if you can see this behind me, but it's my certificate uh, from that, which is pretty cool. Um, and then I just kind of ended up getting into more so bodybuilding. And I watched a lot of like YouTube influencers back then, like David Lade and like your typical gym shark sort of people. And I ended up doing like a diet, my first ever diet, and it was definitely not optimal, but I ended up getting pretty lean. And kind of from there, I just transitioned more into the realm of tracking my nutrition and training more with a bit more knowledge behind me. And things just kind of evolved from there, really.
Spot on, spot on. It's interesting as well, like hearing obviously starting so young. Like I first stepped into a gym at 13 and like I'd say similar, like not happy with my physique, skinny kid, and didn't have the same blow up as you. But yeah, it's interesting to obviously hear you come from that as well. Very, very good. And obviously first like season within natural bodybuilding this year. Talk me through kind of like your expectations, like going into this year and stuff. And I imagine after the first show, like things have changed from obviously winning the whole show. But like, what was your kind of expectation going into it, really? And how did that evolve as the kind of season evolved?
To be honest, like my expectations, like near the start of, or like at the start of prep, like they weren't that high. Like I knew I'd be good for a team. Um, Mostly just because obviously my coach Reese was kind of like backing me on that. But I was like still in doubt on like how well I placed, and like even like when I stepped out onto the stage like for that team class, I was thinking, oh, there's some pretty good guys in here. But obviously I then went on to win that, and that was a massive confidence booster, especially getting into the overall. Um, and like I'm usually quite a nervous person, so the fact that I actually felt confident going into the overall was pretty like cool for me. Um, and then obviously winning that overall was, well, surreal, but that definitely did heighten my expectations going into like PCA Naturals and INB INBA Worlds.
Yeah, definitely. And I imagine after kind of like winning the overall, the next kind of goal is like, all right, yeah, we'll win the next one and we'll win the next
Yeah,
one there. And
yeah, that did kind of happen.
yeah, and obviously a close show. The next time round, I think it was 1 point decision, wasn't it, at the PCA Naturals? How did
Yeah.
you kind of how did that like you take that really from obviously coming from coming off the back of taking the overall to then come in second, and it's a bit like, how was that to you?
It it was difficult because especially at the time, I thought I brought a better look. I was fuller, I was
Yeah.
sharper, um, and I had obviously all the emotions like coming out of that show going into that one. So I was like, oh yeah, I'm on the money sort of thing. And like the expectations for that show up until like maybe like 4 or 5 weeks out, like they weren't that high. Like I was aiming for top three because obviously it was a junior class. Um, Obviously I didn't know it was going to be split into tall and short until I don't know, like a lot closer to the show. I think it was like a week or two out. Um, I was 1 centimeter off being in the tool, and then obviously the short was a very stacked class, and it was good because at the same time, as sad as it was not to win, and how cool it would have been to go through for free, there's a lot of positives you can take from not winning, and I know going into the off season, I'm going to look back on that and be like, okay, I need to be better. So yeah,
Almost kind of like adding fuel to the fire, so to speak. Like,
yeah, pretty much.
yeah, as much as you didn't want to like take it at the time, there's plenty of like lessons to be had from that, which is a good attitude to have, and especially a very mature one at 19 years old as well. Um, so yeah, very, very inspiring. Obviously, taking the overall, and then also like how you carry yourself after like taking a defeat after winning that as well, and then talk me through obviously like the lead up to. So after winning the overall, I imagine the plan straight from there was kind of like getting prepared for Worlds, but you already like pre-planned the PCA Naturals following that. How did that take it like coming in second? Did that like affect your decision making to obviously go overseas to go and doing the Worlds in Netherlands, or like how did that kind of like play on your emotions, if at all?
To be honest, it didn't give me a massive hit. Like it was a bit like, oh, annoying. But I also knew that would probably be like the highest standard I'd come against regarding even being in the junior class at Worlds again. So to be honest, my confidence was actually higher going into Worlds than the PCA Naturals. Um, and obviously I ended up winning that, which is really cool. I didn't get to go into the overall just because they kind of changed it on the day. Initially, I was listed down to go into it, but then they ended up just making it the open classes. But I was very happy. It was kind of like just a case of just bringing an even better look again on from PCA Naturals, and I think we definitely did that. I think Worlds definitely was my best look.
Yeah, yeah, I agree, and it's one of them. We you'll know with bodybuilding, like you can bring an improved package like show to show, but sometimes it's not as if you don't get rewarded from it, but like someone might be just that slight bit well in front of what the judges are kind of like in their eyes. That's what they're looking for from there, and sometimes
Yeah,
you just
100%.
gotta just accept that at the end of the day. But as long as you bring your best and you're happy with your package from there, that's all you can do, mate. And it's obviously rightly rewarded throughout this season. Um,
Yeah.
and then obviously talk me through. So lead up. So obviously did the MBW Classic, and then the lead up to obviously going overseas to Worlds. Was that ever kind of like in the picture from the start? I know you said obviously I had like lower expectations for at the start. You knew you would obviously be good for a team, but you didn't know like how you'd place or anything. Was that ever in the picture? And actually like going to compete over like abroad, how was that? How was that experience? So it's something neither me or Finn have done. Hopefully we plan on doing it in the near future. But yeah, talk me through that, mate.
So initially, I was actually set on doing the WMBF as that was like the same weekend, but due to them obviously clashing, I did pull out of that. But I didn't even have it in like my mind that I'd be like potentially able to compete in that. So obviously, it was a bit like unfortunate that I couldn't do both because I would have happily done both. But it it was really cool to think that okay, I'm going like international almost, uh, and like it was a really cool experience. Like the whole weekend, like we had 2 days after the show in Amsterdam, which is like nice to like kind of like uh just relax a little bit and just enjoy being present and enjoy the moment. It was a really cool few days there, and I obviously got to spend it with my girlfriend and my mom and my coach. So it was really nice time.
nice wrap up and everything. And how would you say kind of like the experience differs from here towards like the Netherlands? I know obviously they'll run it like a similar way with the PNBA and stuff with how the UK DFBA do, but is there any kind of like differences with that, or a lot of similarities with things really?
It was similar, but I'd say it was a lot more unorganized in a way. So like for example, we had to register prior to getting the tan to get a card. However, my tan was a lot earlier than um so because we traveled on the day of the tan, I had to essentially go to the tan first, prior to registering. But basically they wouldn't tan me until I got the register card. So then we had to go register, then come back. And there was no other way we could kind of go about it. Even though they tried like messaging the people and they just weren't replying about the registration. So it was a bit chaotic, a bit unorganized. I didn't explain that too well, but
Yeah.
it did give me a little bit of stress on the day. However, it was manageable and it didn't cause any like further problems.
Yeah, a lot of back and forth and stuff, and that's expected of us with a higher number of kind of like athletes competing there and stuff. Um, and then so if we now go from obviously there into your like now into your off season, or like recovering before going into your off season and stuff, and like talk me through. So obviously coming off the overall, winning the June Worlds as a junior, even though you're still in the team category, but they don't have that. What's kind of the plans next? What was the like coming through off stage and after winning a world title in your teens? Like what was the next plan? I imagine obviously like going towards like pro status and stuff, but how does that look for you? When is you kind of like planning to return to stage?
So due to me being like a junior now, obviously I've got a good amount of time to get better. And it is just a case of probably taking a good 2, 3 years off and just focusing on growing. Like I know what I need to bring up, like my back shots especially. Like there's a lot more improvement I need throughout the rear as a whole, in particular the lats, because I think the plan going forward is to potentially transition more into classic physique. Um, just because I think later on, if I do potentially decide to go assisted, I think that's where my structure lies better than open. Um, that said, though, whether or not next time I will compete, I will be assisted. I do not 100% know. But it is just a case of just taking time to grow, coming back even better. Like next time I step on stage, I do want to almost be unrecognizable. Obviously, I'm very like lower dominant. And like I'd say my front's definitely quite dominant as opposed to my rear, but it's just a case of kind of doing like a men's physique sort of split almost and just bringing everything up.
Yeah, for almost forgetting about the quads for a little bit.
Yeah, unfortunately, maybe some adductors, but
Yeah, so I imagine yeah, imagine with your training then from most of us kind of, well, I'd say going back a decade ago, like getting into the gym, most lads kind of I'd almost like forget about my legs for the first kind of the early years of training. But imagine with your kind of like powerlifting background, it was all pretty much like your squat, bench, and your deadlift, like nailing the three main compounds. Is that pretty much how your training looked? Like just doing the heavy hard lift from the start?
yeah, pretty much. And then obviously, like, looking back on it now, I wish I didn't pull sumo because I reckon my posterior chain would be so much better. I think that's probably why I've got like decent glutes, but it would be cool if I had some serious back things. But like at the end of the day, I know I've got like hinge numbers in mind for this off season. Like I'd really like to pull 6 plates. Um, that would be really cool. I think I got to 200 for 7 reps at the start of prep, which is pretty cool. So it's just a case of obviously just getting stronger at that. But definitely 100%. Like I spent so much time squatting, and it's probably my favorite movement pattern out of all movement patterns. Like even now, um, it's just the feeling you get like after coming out of this heavy squat set, especially when it's like you've taken it to failure. It's just a surreal sort of feeling. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much that.
Yeah, it makes sense, and obviously from the start, you'll repeat the movements that you're good at and you enjoy, and you'll just rinse and repeat with them. And then like most people like would get like rounded over shoulders from the pressing from the start. Not a lot of chest out of it, but luckily for you, you've connected with your quads very well, and obviously a massive strong point from yours. But we'll all have these areas we'll need to kind of like bring up and stuff. So yeah, it's good to notice and see from there, really, mate. So off season, regardless, is that kind of like whether assisted or not, like 3 or 4 years, probably looking at like 2027 then 2026 potentially.
Yeah, yeah, like just the end of being a junior, pretty much. That would be exciting. That would be very exciting. So I'd quite like to. One thing I didn't actually touch on is I would like a pro card, whether or not that is um in like an assisted, a tested or an untested fed. Like that is the goal. Like to have a pro card. Obviously an INBA pro card is quite cool, but I think there are cooler pro cards. For example, like WNBF pro card would be pretty cool. Um, but it's just a kind of it's just something I guess we'll see as time goes on.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's good to not kind of like hold yourself to one specific thing. And like as you can see, it's that the main thing is like enjoying your training, having these set numbers now to like progress them lifts as much as you can. And like, or what is the goal now? It's a case of like being as strong as possible and bringing up them weaker areas really. And so talk me through your training. Obviously, you've enjoyed training. You've done about six years into your training now. Um, how did it like training kind of like change or it shouldn't or change at all, or like how did that look for you, like transitioning like into your prep and so from there, like after doing your prep, like obviously transitioning to your off season now, what changed for you in terms of like how you view training or anything like that, if at all?
So like I'd say competing has kind of always been like a byproduct of my training. And my love for training has never like really decreased. Like it's always the thing that's like there in my head. So going into prep, like I kind of knew it will kind of get more challenging as time goes on, and it did. It definitely did. But at the same time, like I knew if I went in with the sort of like mindset that this could be a bad session or things aren't going my way or whatnot, I knew the session would ultimately just be worse. So it was just a case of just almost having that like sort of like trained by JP mentality of just do not miss. Um, Obviously like my training style like Ness didn't really change. There was like some level of auto regulation with volume um as I got deeper into prep. For example, I was finding stiff legs do become like obviously pretty demanding, and like I have a physical job outside of that, so there's a lot of bending over involved with that. And I found that like for example my erectors were just absolutely ruined from like Saturday where I'd hinge, and then kind of like through to like that Tuesday point in the week, and then I'd be trying to pull again, and it was just kind of like an endless cycle. But there were sessions where like I did like kind of struggle to get up for them, but at the same time I wouldn't have had it any other way, because now looking back on it, I'm happy that I ticked every single box sort of every single day. Um, and like going forward, even like the past week or so, just having like these additional few hundred grams of carbohydrates, sorry, have been like amazing. Like I feel so good in the gym. And it's just cool because like towards the latter end of prep, like trying to grind through those sort of like 50-50 reps, it was just a no. Whereas like now I actually can like grind through a lot more of them, and I'm really enjoying training again already. Like it's really cool.
Yeah, it's awesome to hear that bit as well, especially now with this kind of like a newer generation obviously coming into like competing. It's more readily available through social media and stuff like that. But it's really good to hear obviously you're in it for the love of training, and that's kind of like how we start, and it's how you should be really, because if not you're gonna struggle going through a prep, because as you all know, like it's not easy, is it? Like it's hard, and as you mentioned, you've got like a physical like demanding job. And what do you actually do, if you don't mind me asking, for like work alongside? I know you coach as
So
well.
yeah, so I work in retail, but I I usually end up like stacking up the online shopping to go out to the deliveries. A mixture of that and like bending over and actually picking the food to go in those totes that I then later move. So it just ends up being like quite demanding. And I know there's more physically demanding jobs, but in a prep, any sort of physical movement is hard after a while.
Yeah, that's it. Even the littlest of tasks when you're bending over and stuff after like stiff legs the day before, it's it's not ideal, is it, mate? So yeah, I
Yeah.
can definitely reason with you there, sure. Any questions from your end, Finn? I know you had a couple come through on the page as well.
Yeah, no. To be fair, I was just going to add to that. In my first prep 2016, I was in retail because I just started as a PT, and I found myself like right at the arse end of prep. As you say, it's difficult in terms of the movement and this being on your feet all day. But I remember I was like in the clothing department, but I had to help out around Christmas on the before Christmas, sorry, on the lead up in the food, and my food focus was so high. I would be like holding like all these like nice like pizzas and stuff, just staring at them. And I just found myself I've been like stood still for like 2 minutes, just staring at this food, looking at it, thinking, "Oh, that's really nice." Obviously, I was all over the place with like a food focus because I was so like depleted and hungry. But yeah, I can totally appreciate how hard it is to be, in the retail industry. But obviously, just seeing that you've launched like free coaching, so is that something that you're wanting to kind of do a lot more in, or basically get into as full time?
It's definitely something I'd like to have as like almost like a side hustle until the point I could potentially take it if I ever could take it full time. But at the moment, like I started kind of like midway through prep with like a few people I know and just like mates and stuff. And I kind of kept it on the low, but I kind of wish I didn't at the same time because now I feel like I've come out of prep and it's just like, oh, he's done one prep, he's now an online coach. But in reality, it's not like that. I just feel like I just started posting about it now. But it's definitely something I want to kind of grow. It would be cool if I could eventually get some like disposable income off it, but for the time being, it's just a case of doing it for free and kind of establishing like a baseline of clients and going from there really.
No, you're doing the right thing in my opinion. I always say to like the younger lot, like the experience you get, even if it's just a bit of like free, doing it for free or doing it very very cheap, like that's really good experience, and I think it is the best way to like start yourself off. And so I think credit to you. I wouldn't look at that as because obviously offering it for free and saying you're doing it in that regard, I wouldn't look at that from the outside. I mean, like, oh, here he is, like one prep wonder kind of thing. Like you should go in the right way about it. So if we like went back like a little bit, so what was like your first interaction with like the natty bodybuilding side of thing, and what was like your first kind of experience of seeing, following it? Did you go to any shows? Like what kind of introduced you to it?
I think, to be honest, the only show I've ever went to prior to my prep was actually like the Body Power Expo in like Birmingham back in like 2018, I want to say 2019. And I watched a bit of the bodybuilding there. I can't remember what shirt it would have been, but it definitely was a untested one. Um, looking back on it. And then like the majority of like the natural bodybuilding I've seen has just been on like Instagram and just social media. I've always had a lot of more so the untested sort of side of bodybuilding. However, like my interests do lie very much in between both of those two. Um, and I find natural bodybuilding almost like it as cool as it is to see, and I think it is very, very impressive. I think there's just something about untested or assisted bodybuilding that I find more interesting when it comes to actually like watching and kind of engaging with. However, I'm not in that realm as of the minute, obviously, and so obviously I kind of relate to both of them, and I enjoy watching both of them really.
No, no. To be fair, that's quite a fair answer because obviously it is where everyone looks. It's where the money is. It's where the fame is and the adulation. So I don't think it's an unfair statement to make that. Obviously, more eyes are going to be on there. And to be fair, with how successful we've been already as a natural, you've ticked off many of the life goals, as I'd almost call of people. You've competed internationally. You've won an overall. Like you're in touching distance of a pro card in like your first three shows, and most people like they compete for decades, and that's something that they don't quite attain. So, for you to already having like future aspirations of maybe moving on is no bad thing. I always say like if you've got the structure and and the actual like genetics, I think it's well worth doing. If you're going to really pursue it to its utmost and be very successful, as I'm sure you will be. So, in terms of like your coach, with so Reese, what kind of how did you first come across him? How did you come to work with him?
So I followed one of his clients, I believe, and I watched them do a prep, and that's how kind of I came across his social media. And then from there, I followed him for, I want to say, about a year or so. Really liked the content he was pushing out. Um, really thought he was like the sort of individual that I'd get along well with, which I obviously do now. Um, and then I think just prior to Christmas, I think I was like, yeah, I'm going to send it. I'm going to sign up. I've been thinking about this for a while. Signed up, and then things went from there. And obviously, like I jumped into a prep pretty quickly with him, which is like probably more on an unorthodox sort of side of things. However, I think just due to like the position where we were in, like regarding it obviously being my last year as a team, and my foundation was obviously pretty decent, it ended up working out really well.
Yeah, spot on, mate. Yeah, to be fair, like I think that's the best way to like select a coach. It's what I kind of advertise in my own coaching. Like, I don't want people to just kind of like first search. All right, here he is. I'll join him today. Like, you don't know anything about me. I'd rather him know me. And it's the same with like you and Reese. You followed him for a long time. You saw his results. You saw who he was. More importantly, how he works, his values. I think that's a really important thing for anyone selecting a coach. You've got to align with him. And you've also got to think, well, I think we could get on. Like, if his style is quite blunt, honest in your face, and you're quite a meek person who needs your belly tickling, obviously you're probably not going to get on. So there's no point going with someone who is going to be like, swearing on your check-ins if you're a bit like sensitive in that kind of respect. So I think it's the best way to select coaches. Know someone beforehand a little bit, or as much as you can know someone through social media. So obviously, look, it's unorthodox to jump straight into a prep, but clearly it works. Like, and I've been saying to a couple of people because there's a couple of lads at my gym who were teens, and one of them's competing next year. And he's asked one of the questions we'll get onto in a little bit, and I was just kind of saying to them, about having you on and saying like, because comparison and everything like that. And I said, obviously, remember like this guy was lifting heavy at like 15, 16, like as you've said, like pulling heavy weights. Yeah, it was sumo, but Canelli, you still got to lift it off the floor. And this is why, for someone like yourself, I do think the teen category is definitely something you should do, and obviously vindicate it because you won the juniors and you'd have been within touching distance in that overall. Whereas for some teens, obviously, who maybe haven't got like your background, some of them feel a little bit overwhelmed. Like, oh, why is he so good at like 19? It's like, well, this is what I mean. You don't know the person's backstory. Like, if you've been powerlifting from like very early age, it's going to show on your physique to someone who maybe has just joined the gym a year or two ago. Like, so absolutely, I think if the frame's right and you had this last opportunity to be a teen and not knowing how successful you would have going to be, I think it was definitely the right decision. I mean, it would for me, like, and seeing you, like, how you got on, obviously, yeah, winning overall, like, outstanding, like, not been done, obviously, outside of Josh last year for a team. And then, obviously, touching distance with Julian at the PCA, who's then now become a WNBF pro, which, just shows his caliber and you've then
Yeah.
your. So for me, looking at this, I think you are at that level. So when you're saying like chasing a pro card, like for me, like the journey is also should be something to look at as well, because I'd say you're already there, but obviously you're going to work towards that potentially whatever route you go down if you stay natural ego assisted for your next prep. But like you're there already, and now it's so maybe focus also on the internal of actually loving the process and just deep dive into the training. Because obviously, hypertrophy focused training is probably something that's still quite new to you.
Yeah, I definitely say it is relatively new to me in like the grand scheme of things. I'd say potentially like the sort of like top set back off sort of approach with like training to failure, and like structuring my workouts without having like necessarily that compound lift at the start of like a squat bench deadlift is definitely something I probably only like kind of got into the last year and a half, 2 years maybe. And obviously definitely a lot further to go in that regard, which is obviously very exciting.
Yeah, man. With the the squat bench deadlift, is that something that you're gonna keep more or less? I know they're not optimal as people say. So, but I know Reese loves them as well. Like Reese does love the heavy, especially deadlifts. He's a fucking ridiculous deadlifter. So strong. So is that something that you're just because you naturally enjoy them, but also you're very good at them? Is that something that you're going to keep in? I know you did Smith squats the other day and you were disappointed in yourself, but Smith squats are fucking good. They are like for bodybuilding anyway.
Yeah.
So is the squat bench deadlift something that you're going to kind of keep on as much as possible?
Well, not bench press. Like I haven't really bench pressed in a good amount of time. It's definitely my weakest of the big three. But I do really enjoy like a low incline Smith press.
Yeah.
And that will definitely be keeping that in. Regarding like deadlifting, I do want to get like a really strong hinge. So um that will definitely be staying in. And then obviously, yeah, I've transitioned into Smith machine squats from the hack squat. Uh which I do love a hack squat, but it's not the same sort of feel as like having that weight on your back almost. Um, and then obviously like I kind of had to go middle ground because as much as I would kind of like to barbell squat, I think I need to kind of stick to more still a hypertrophy sort of approach with like a Smith machine squat. And to be fair, like I really do enjoy just any sort of squat. So it'll just be exciting to run them up. Like I was like disappointed the other day, but at the same time, like I kind of thought I would be weaker. So I'll take that as a starting point. It's a good baseline to run up um over the next few months or so.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like yeah, the weight you were doing, yeah, it's a very good start to say what your 7 days post prep. Like,
Yeah.
it's a good place to be, and ultimately, like barbell squat, Smith squat, like if you get on with it and you enjoy it, it's something that I talk about with my clients. Like a lift you enjoy, and I think I posted about it the other day. Like even if it's not on the optimal kind of list, like but if you enjoy a Smith squat and hacks more optimal, you're gonna progress the Smith squat because you're gonna go in, you're gonna be fucking fired up, you're gonna be like really like I can't wait to Smith squat today. And if hack's a bit like you're not that fussed, are you gonna take that progression as much? Are you gonna really get yourself switched on for a hack squat
Yeah.
versus Smith squat? And for me, if the answer is Smith squat first, then that's what as a coach and obviously as Reese is doing, saying yeah, crack on, mate. Like if you're gonna go into the gym Smith squat day like giddy because she gets a Smith squat or back squat, then I'd rather have someone do that. So I absolutely agree with you. Just out of interest, what was your total? Your best total back in the day?
That competition, I think I only got about 425. Um, via like a 150 squat, which I nearly bombed out on, like an 87 kilo bench, and then like a 195 deadlift. But my like all-time best sort of actual numbers, which was when I was like 17 or 18, I did a 235 squat, a 120 bench, and 290 deadlift. Obviously sumo.
Fucking hell, so yeah, that's immense, mate. Like, and what would you say your body weight was when you did that?
Oh, it was like mid 80s, I want to say.
Yeah, so fucking that's not a bad total at all. Like 700 odd total at mid 80s as a teenager is pretty incredible, mate. So fair play to that. So in terms of like coming in and obviously going quite in early to a prep, what would you say has been the most like eye-opening kind of aspect of prepping that maybe on the outside you could see when you've watched other people prep, but you didn't realize until you had that same feeling or same thing happen? Like, what was the most like eye-opening? As if to say, it can be good or bad.
Probably how important routine is and structure, and just making sure you're ticking boxes almost as early as possible. Because if there's like if I ended up having like a good amount of stuff to do in like that, like towards the end of the day, it just brings so much stress and so much kind of uncertainty. It feels like it's the end of the world, but really it's not. You can still get stuff done. But definitely like having that routine like drilled in almost before you start prep is very, very important. I think looking back on it, um, like I didn't have to make a lot of changes to my routine. And like the changes, obviously, like if I would get like a step increase, it's quite a small sort of change you have to make. Like realistically, if you get 2,000 extra steps, that's like an extra 20 minutes of walking a day. It's just a case of making sure you can like fit it in, and just get stuff done really. But I think like if from an outside perspective looking in on prep, it's like, oh, you don't actually like realize that there's all these other things in the day that you do normally, like work and spending time with your like girlfriend, for example, and like you still have to make time for that, and it is doable, but like you don't actually think about it until you're actually in that situation.
Yeah, no, mate, I absolutely bang on. I agree. And I always say, like, with like a checklist prior to prep, like, if anyone, any age, doesn't matter if you're teen or, you're in your 40s or 50s, if you're starting a prep and your life's all over the place, your training's all over the place, your food's all over the place, like you haven't got anything set, like don't go on a prep expecting, oh, well, those will all get improved whilst I'm on a prep. You want them beforehand, because if not, it's not, as you know, like if you're sub 10% body fat and like you haven't got a routine, you're gonna just fall apart, and it's gonna be a ball of stress, and then you're just gonna look shit, feel shit, hate everything about the prep. So absolutely, mate. And to be fair, that kind of answers this one from Freddie, who's the guy I work with. He asked, what should you expect kind of he says as a team going into prep, because he's going to do the MBW next year, so one obviously you did very well in, and he took a lot of inspiration from yourself and from you winning the overall. So he asked, like, what would you expect as a team going into a prep, and like any kind of challenging things that I know you've just kind of just answered that, but anything to add on that one?
Yeah, it really just is a case of just like living like a bodybuilder before kind of transitioning into that prep. Like if you are nailing those things initially, like I just like sort of touched on, you will find the prep a lot easier. Another thing is like making sure like when it comes to like friends and like kind of like your social life, like you can still manage it. You just kind of got to go about it in a smart way. Like don't feel like you can't do stuff that is fun, because you can. Like me and my girlfriend Phoebe, like we went to the cinema still. Obviously, like you can't have popcorn and stuff like that, but you can have like a Pepsi Max or whatever. And it's just a case of like almost finding that balance between like being a full robot or being like 90% robot with 10% sort of like flexibility, but still like adhering to like the best of your abilities. Like I didn't slip up once, but I still made time to spend time with my girlfriend and do other things external to like bodybuilding.
Yeah, bang on, mate. And to be fair, from like the outside looking in, obviously I only get a glimpse because it's social media, but it seems like your girlfriend has been really, really, really supportive and a really,
Yeah.
really important cog in your prep, which is great to see, because especially with like a young couple, obviously it's quite a strange thing for her if she's like kind of like, well, all this bodybuilding, what's all this about, and then all this like check-ins in your pant and everything like that, you can be a bit like, I'm really kind of confused what's going on. So to have someone in your corner like that is really, really like good to see, and it's probably just helped you in terms of enjoy it more, because obviously, yeah, if you'd come away as a world champion but you came away kind of single, then it's like, well, what was it kind of all
Yeah.
for? Like, you don't want that. No one wants that. So no, it's great to see, mate. And yeah, absolutely. I think cinema's the big one. All those bodybuilders can still do that. Like you say, just get a zero sugar drink. And also, you just get to sit down for like 2 or 3 hours, which actually is quite nice on prep, especially if you're feeling a bit
Yeah,
fucked, because you just sit in
100%.
the dark and just zone out and become a zombie for a couple of hours. So, yeah, cinema's a good one. It's a really decent one. I've got another one here, and then jump if see if Luke's got any more. Orin Fitness. He's also a teen, actually. He looks really good. I think he's doing shows like later on. He's quite shredded, actually. The old favourite, tips for managing fatigue and knowing when to back off. So, what would your advice be on that?
Now, if that's obviously like relative to like training specifically, that's just going to be a sort of monitoring. Are you recovering well enough? Are you finding that you're going into a session and a particular body part sort of sore all the time? But I don't know if he meant like external to that, as in like in a prep. Um, it is just like you are going to be fatigued. Like of course you are. I'd say it's just a sort of case of like not letting it get to you too much. Like obviously there's things you can utilize, like caffeine, for example, and obviously like if your sleep's poor, it's obviously going to have an impact on that. But I think going into prep, when I noticed that my energy did start to drop, it was just a case of kind of taking it almost hour to hour and being like, okay, I don't feel great for this hour, but the next hour might not be as bad as this hour. And it's just a case of getting through each hour 1 hour at a time. And then before you know it, you're probably feeling fine again. And that sort of like almost level of a mental block that you have is kind of just out of your head. You forgot about it and you're kind of like on to the next part of your day.
Yeah, spot on, mate. And that's the thing. I think I'll hold my hands up and certainly say in my first prep, like my training fatigue management was, and this isn't an issue with with coaching, because obviously it was just new. Like it wasn't brilliant. Like, and if I look back, I was probably doing too much towards the end of prep, where obviously you want to be, dropping your volume a bit and making sure that it's just about what you can recover from, rather than just like the arbitrary volume that you've been doing the entire way through prep. So, I learned that lesson kind of the hard way. So for you to have, and again, that's where Reese comes in really handy for you to say, look, mate, even if you're doing one set on each movement on a pull day, you're not going to lose muscle. Like, you're going to lose more muscle by trying to do 2-3 sets per exercise, and then you're coming away like fucking dying every single session. And like you say, if then you're doing pull 2, 3, 4, 5 days later, you're just going to end up like circling the drain every single week, and then you just get on stage and you've just lost all that muscle that you built, from your powerlifting background. So,
Yeah.
absolutely bang on.
I think having that like level of auto regulation is really important, because like I found it was almost more beneficial for me to kind of go and having that mindset of, if I have one really really good set, I'll just do one set, and if I feel like I can do another one, I'll do another one. And instead of me kind of going in and thinking like, oh, okay, I've got to do 2 sets on here on like a dumbbell split squat, and I'm gonna absolutely like bury myself, um, and be ruined. It's kind of just okay, one set, get it done, make it the best you possibly can, and then it's just a lot nicer to kind of go in and think, okay, I I need to get everything out of this set, and if it's almost good enough, um, depending on how I feel, I'll do another one or not. Yeah, yeah.
No, that's a really mature view of training, and again, it just shows you why all these teens and juniors are doing so well, because you are nailing these kind of things at your age, whereas as me and Luke have said on previous episodes, like we were just dicking around basically at your age in the gym. We had no idea. So, Luke, have you got any more questions come through on your end?
More to want to ask from myself, really. I know you were saying going into your first show well, even the second one and so on, you kind of like get stress, kind of like how did you almost like manage the stress going into the show, particularly your first show, like how did you what did you kind of put in place to manage that the best you could, and how did you improve that like show to show, really?
I just kind of took progressively more and more ashwagandha, to be honest. No, I'm joking, but basically it was a case like, I would say I'm a pretty stressful person, especially over like small little factors that I can't control, which is stupid. But
Same, mate.
it, I yeah, oh, I thought I just went then. But it was it was weird, because I thought I was going to be really stressed out and nervous on the day, but I think having my coach there and just kind of chatting to him, kind of not necessarily even about the show necessarily, and just kind of distracting myself, was the biggest sort of thing. Like, I initially thought I'd be like there backstage, headphones in, kind of just like zoning in, but I think that would have actually been like the least beneficial thing for me, because I think I would have just been like almost sat there thinking about the worst the worst scenario possible. And I think that's why I was just so chilled out, is because I literally just sat there, just relaxed, feet up. Um, like the same with the PCA naturals, like I was just chilling. I wasn't doing much. I was just talking to like the people around me that I know, and just kind of enjoying it as it was. Um, the only one I would say I was actually like marginally stressed about was Worlds, and that was just probably because the sort of disorganization I found like the day of the tan, but the actual like show day was pretty calm. Um, there were a lot of competitors backstage. It was a very big room, but it was also very rammed, so it was a bit like sensory wise, it was a lot to take in. It was definitely a little bit overwhelming, but at the same time, like again, I was just sat there just chilling, and it was just a case of like relaxing and kind of looking forward to enjoying the like last show of the season.
Yeah, spot on, really. And as you'll go through like more shows, you'll feel more kind of comfortable with that process, even though some shows will run slightly different, but differently. But you'll just feel a little bit more comfortable with kind of roughly knowing how things are going to kind of like map out, and so and you can just allow yourself to kind of like drop them stress levels a little bit more as well. And then in regards to like doing well your season as a whole. So coming into this season, like what was one thing you like took from competing this year? That's something you was kind of like unaware of, really, because obviously it's like a completely new experience here, really. Like training in the gym, you can live like a bodybuilder and train like a bodybuilder, have your like nutrition, everything on all your habits on lock. But until you've stepped on stage, you've not really gone through the posing and everything to be a bodybuilder, have you? So what was the biggest thing you've like took away from this season that you was kind of unaware of, really?
The actual feeling of like being on stage, like aside from being overwhelmed with like emotions and adrenaline and stuff like that, which definitely is also like a byproduct of what I'm about to say. Uh, just how fast it goes. Like you could like get me to do 3 rounds of posing right now, and I'd find that drastically harder than doing 5 or 6 rounds on stage. Just having that adrenaline and like seeing the lights going down on you and knowing that you're performing in front of like however many people. It's such a weird feeling, and before you know it, it's over. But I enjoyed every second of it, and I almost didn't think I'd enjoy it as much as I did because I enjoyed the training, and I thought like, oh, this is just kind of like a byproduct of that. But when you're actually up on that stage, it is like such a surreal feeling, and like you kind of get like this level of euphoria. And it really is like unmatched.
Yeah, I totally agree because once you're there, it's like yes, you're getting into this for the love of training and stuff, but it's like once you're under the lights, to sort of speak, like that's when you get to showcase all the kind of like the hard work you've put into your training.
Yeah,
Yeah, can totally reason with you on that one, mate. So yeah, really good to hear. To be fair, I've never really like thought of it in that way until you've kind of like put it across that way.
that's
Um,
cool.
yeah, so really cool to hear. So anything else you've got on your end, Finn, in regards to the question?
No more questions have come through. But yeah, to be fair, for me, just for a question for myself would be like, I know we've kind of touched upon it, but in terms of like, you're just about to turn 20 now. Like, I don't want to wish time away, and this isn't the question, but like, if you could fast forward to turning 30 in a decade's time, like, what would be like the dream goal or goals for you in and out of bodybuilding?
That's a tricky one because as much as I look in the future, I don't feel like I look that far in the future. But it would definitely be like from a bodybuilding perspective, I'd like to have probably done like 3 seasons at least. Um, Pro card in like a Fed. Um, I reckon another overall win would be really cool. I definitely like to have um a good level of my online sort of like online coaching business up and running, whether or not it is like my full-time job or it is like just a very like big part of my sort of like a side hustle or whatever. Um, Living like in a nice house with my girlfriend, that would be really cool. I really like hope hope to have like a good house and like a good like financial sort of be in a good financial spot, sorry, to the point where I can not necessarily stress about like things that um are impacted by not having a good financial sort of I'm having a brain fart moment right now. Clearly still got prep brain, but you know what I'm saying. And then like probably like some dogs or like pets or whatever, and then yeah, nice car maybe. That would be pretty much that wrapped up.
Sounds a good decade, mate, and I don't see why most, if not all of that can't happen. And from our point of view, if in a couple of years' time, you're on that Olympia stage, people can search on YouTube, and this interview will come up when you were just getting out started, just at the start of the career, and people are like, fucking hell, look at young Jacob back then, like. So in a few years' time, mate, I'm hoping people look back at these early interviews and see, oh, this is how we started, and if they hear this question and you answering that, and then it happens, that'd be a nice little moment you could come back to. And but yeah, mate, I fully think, especially on the stage side of things, you definitely have the ability to kind of achieve whatever you want, realistically, in my opinion. And it is just about enjoying it and sticking at it. And if you keep doing that, all those successes will come, no matter what path you go down. It's for me, it's almost a certainty, which obviously nothing is. But I think with someone like yourself, with your foundation and like mindset already, I think that the success is just going to keep coming. But the key is obviously, like you say, if it's still enjoyable and still something you get a lot out of, that's got to be the key, because you don't want to turn around when you're like 23, 24 and be like, you know what, I might go back to powerlifting again, because it's you almost like you need something to keep yourself occupied. So if as long as you keep that, mate, you'll be definitely achieving all those goals for sure.
Yeah, hopefully, man. Hopefully, this is like the prophecy right here. But
This is
I
it.
heard it here first. But that would be really cool to see. But obviously, it's just a case of keep turning up each day.
That's it, mate. Well, we've got form on here already, because I predicted Julian getting his WNBF Pro card, so we've already got that one. So we'll keep making prophecies. So all guests from now on, we'll make sure that when everything comes true that gets said. So we're 1 for 1 at the minute. So we'll go 2 for 2 in the next few years, mate. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. We'll have to come back to this. Do like an update.
Definitely. Oh yeah, mate. Absolutely. Is Luke? Have you got any more topics,
No,
and then we can.
I think you're pretty much wrapped up. I think we've had a decent like crossover with some of the questions and stuff, and obviously got to know a lot about your backstory, what kind of got you into training, how that looked for you from stepping into a gym as a 13-year-old with your mum, like your plans and stuff, how you've handled with your prep as well. Just one thing to say for especially our younger listeners or like first timers. What one piece of advice would you give to someone stepping into a prep, whether it's this year or in future years to come? One key bit of advice you've learned throughout this prep, mate.
It's just like, I'm gonna keep it simple, but it is just a case of enjoying the process, because if you're not enjoying the process, you're not gonna get the most out of whatever it is like in life in general that you choose to do. So I would just say it's a case of making sure you're present each day, and just as much as like you kind of do turn into a robot, for example, in prep, but just make sure you're present and make sure you enjoy each day as it comes, because before you know it, especially like for me, after like that like 8 weeks out mark, like it flies. Like from March to May was almost like a blur. It is crazy. And then actually competing, like considering I did almost back to back sort of weekends, like that those 4 weeks felt like a week. And now it feels like it was a month ago. So it just enjoy the process, and it'll be good. It'll be enjoyable no matter the outcome.
Mate, I think it's the best way you could put that, really. And then on your side, Jacob, do you have anything to leave to plug? I know you've got your coaching that you want to be doing on the side, or anything to ask either myself or Finn before you go, mate.
No, not really. But since you do offer, obviously, if there is anyone interested in some like free online coaching, you can go to my Instagram, which is Jacob Tipperr, Tipper. And you can go on the free link in my bio, fill out an application form, and get that across, because I would much appreciate any experience. So if you want to like get shredded for summer or whatever it is, like I'm more than happy to take on any free clients. That would be cool. But other than that, like thank you for having me on. This has been a really cool chat, and I look forward to hopefully doing an update podcast in like 1, 2, 3 years, whenever that is, and hopefully the prophecy has come true. That'd be really cool. So yeah, that's that.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a pleasure having you on, mate. And we'll make sure we obviously put your handle in the bio as well for on our YouTube and Spotify. For all our listeners, they can go on there and hopefully
Thank you, man.
From that, mate. But yeah, been a pleasure having you on. And yeah, and hopefully 2, 3 years time, mate, that's come true, mate. Because you know, we've got Finn's a bit of a wizard with that. You see, 100% conversion rate so far. So hopefully we can do it that way.
Yeah, man, it's definitely happening. Definitely happening.
Yeah, spot on, mate. Yeah, well, it's been a pleasure having you on anyway, mate. And yeah,
Yeah,
your off season, and look forward to seeing that 300 kilo getting pulled, even if you're doing it.
yeah, yeah. Well, we'll see anyway. But yeah, honestly, thank you both of you for having me on. I do appreciate your time. So thank you guys, and I'll catch you in a bit.
Yeah, pleasure, mate.
Yeah,
Enjoy the rest of your day.
top
We'll
man.
see you soon.
And yourselves.